Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a part two of our series with the Double A podcast girls, Ashley and Andrea. And I think you are going to be very excited to hear from Andrea today. Last week, we were able to hear from Ashley. But let me start in and tell you a little about Andrea. Recovery doesn't always start with weight loss, sometimes it starts with survival. Today's episode explores how ultra processed food impacts inflammation, immunity, and the nervous system, and how healing can begin when food becomes medicine. So, Andrea, let's talk about Andrea Crane. She has a whole bunch of letters behind her name: a DNP, an MSHNFM, a BSN, a BS. And if you can say what all those things are, you will get a gold sticker by your name
Oh,
today.
it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous.
Andrea holds a doctorate in nursing practice from the University of Wyoming, a Master of Science in Human Nutrition and Functional Medicine from Western States University, and Bachelor's of Science degrees in both nursing and molecular biology. With a minor in biochemistry, of course, from the Metropolitan State University of Denver. Additionally, she has completed supplemental training in functional neurology and blood chemistry analysis, as well as multiple modules with the Institute of Functional Medicine. Andrea has also completed several other advanced practice IFM modules. Andrea taught courses in anatomy and physiology and pharmacology for over a decade and has authored several books for pharmacy technicians. She is a recognized public speaker, health information content creator, and educational program designer. When not taking care of patients, you will find Andrea in her massive Idaho garden or at the gym developing her powerlifting skills. So she hasn't done much. She's kind of a slacker.
My husband hears all those letters and all he sees are checks. So it has been a
That
long and
was not
expensive
free.
past. No,
Those
it was not.
letters were not free. Can we say
Nope.
that?
Yeah.
So, needless to say, it's a real honor and a pleasure to have you here. And we are ready to glean all of the
Oh,
wisdom that you are willing to share with us today. But first, I want to start out from a place where we get to know you as just the girl. And there was something that made your life turn out the way it did. So if you want to start out telling us a little about you to humanize you so we don't think you are this perfect person that everything's gone right your entire life
oh,
and you are just a brainiac and everything comes easy. Tell us about you. Let us know more about who you are.
yeah. Well, lest there are any misconceptions, I didn't complete my first college degree until I was 33 years old. So,
Amazing story.
yeah. So there's a lot, like so many people, rather traumatic upbringing. And as we know, adverse childhood events are related, intricately related to development of autoimmunity. And so I developed my first autoimmune disease when I was 15 and then just
Wow.
went on to collect several more, and reached a health crisis when I was nearing 40. And that's when I find, in practice, I see a lot of women in that age range that, their physiology, they've we impose upon the good graces of our physiology until we can't anymore, and especially as women. And so I had very much done that, and it wasn't anything on purpose. I didn't have the education that I needed, to understand what was happening. I was very well versed in convention, I'll say. Very well versed in pharmacy, in medication, in, that kind of conventional management of conditions. And for myself, when I had my health crisis, everything just sort of fell apart at once, and I was unable to work. I was unable to care for my kids, and it was really a trying time. And it's one of those things where, you have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. And so I knew the medication that they were offering me to manage my crisis and all of my autoimmunity and grossly inflamed system. There are myriad side effects that come along with those, and probably a malignancy later on down the line that I was headed towards, because they suppress the immune system from a global sense, and so you can't help but develop cancers later on. And so anyway, it was just a really untenable situation. I didn't want the drugs. I didn't know what else to do. And so I really felt like, I'm a unabashed Jesus follower. And I really felt like I was led to functional medicine and nutrition. Um, Never heard of this before. I probably in my earlier days, I would have thought it was a bunch of, hippie mumbo jumbo and woo. But I essentially was healed and put my conditions into remission, using food as medicine and lifestyle interventions. And so yeah, it was not an easy road, but I on this side of things, I'm grateful for it.
Did you, first of all, I realized I don't know if I properly said hello to Ashley, but she is here.
Hello, Ashley.
She's Andrea's other half.
Hello.
Yep.
Glad to have you
Yes, we're a
here.
package deal.
Yes,
Yep.
glad to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Um, the only other question I'll ask you to follow up with this is,
Mhm.
was it a light bulb moment, turning point in your life where things came together, or was it that dimmer switch where things slowly came together that you're like, you made the big statement about food being medicine, which I
Yeah.
mean, that's my number one life motto
Yeah.
too. Was that like you had some pivotal event that you realized, or was that a slow burn figuring that out?
Paige, that's an interesting question. I do think it was more of a slow burn, although I did reach a point where I'm a very life-loving person. I'm so fortunate and privileged to not struggle with depressive episodes
Yeah.
or, you know, um, that kind of pathology. But at that point in my life, it was a low of epic proportion, and I could not see any way forward to live like that. It wasn't life. And so that hasn't come to my door very often, maybe twice that I can think of in my lifetime. So I do feel like there were threads of hope as it, and this is the thing, I've always been a seeker of knowledge and information and
Hmm.
pretty ravenous when it comes to learning things. Um, but this feels like it was doled out to me in a very purposeful way. And so I can only attribute that to a divine origin. So yeah, it just kind of came when I needed it. And I found these podcasts. And
Hmm.
I mean, how much of our education is mediated by podcasts these days?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I found these podcasts. People were really getting some dramatic reductions in inflammation just with dietary changes. And so I thought, wow, could this really be that powerful? But I was desperate. And it was, okay, food, completely benign intervention to eat healthful food. And I wasn't eating trash to begin with, but it was very much a sort of a standardized diet. I ate lots of processed foods. I'm old. And so the low fat dogma was certainly
Oh,
something that I
yeah.
grew up with. And
SnackWell cookies.
oh my gosh. Yeah. So just ridiculous things that we kind of was crammed into us growing up, and diet culture, constantly my I was an athlete, and my weight was something that was always under scrutiny at home, and lots of diets, just diet after diet after diet. And so, yeah, it was, I think long answer to a short question
Hmm.
was, I think it was a doling out over time, because there's so much information. And eventually I had to go and pursue additional information, with the master's program that I enrolled in, because I just thought if there's more to learn here, then I need to learn it.
My husband used to always say you can only connect the dots moving backwards. And so,
Oh, wow.
haven't you
Yeah.
found that in the universe, like things come to you right in the right time? Like if
Yeah.
all of this was presented to you maybe earlier, you'd been like,
Yeah. Yeah.
ignored it.
Absolutely. And Eastern philosophy says when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so
Hmm.
I really think that there are universal truths that we see, across that cut across all culture and all humanity. And yeah, I was ready. I was definitely ready.
And before we go forward in our conversation, I want to step back for one moment because you were making an indication about how some past traumas, and the only reason I bring this up is because a lot of people have dealt with this, and you kind of mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that the mind and the body work in tandem, that what's happened to you physically, what do they say
Mm-hmm.
about when you don't have words, the body will speak. I'm really botching that up,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
basically, don't you think what happens to you in your life shows up physically inside your body?
Oh, without a doubt. And we have, I'm kind of a data geek, and we have data that this is no longer in the realm of the philosopher. We have hard and fast data that show that, and I think there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score that people have been
Yes,
reading
that's
these
it.
days. But yeah, there is a survival switch that
Yeah,
is flipped. And when, the body is very good at keeping us alive, but sometimes it's only just alive. And there's a big difference between
yeah.
aliving and thriving. And
Hmm.
when you're just aliving, there are lots of ancillary systems that take a back seat.
Hmm.
So when someone is safe, well nourished, well cared for, and have the inputs that they need, then the body is is safe to bring all of these other systems online and focus on normal development, to include brain and
Totally.
other physiology. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is skipping around, but talk about how when people feel safe and everything's,
Mhm.
well taken care of, all their needs
Mhm.
are met, there's not going to be all this raging inflammation in the body. But
Mhm.
when we're working with people that have major trauma, on top of processed food, on top of dysregulated systems, do you want to talk about how that does invite inflammation in the body and what
Yeah.
inflammation in the body looks like, where it can lead to, including, cancers once you've got inflammation
Mhm.
inside the cells?
Yeah, so that's, and you may have to kind of guide me in questioning a little bit if I don't answer this fully. But there's, gosh, we could talk for days about this.
Yeah, it's
But
big.
essentially what happens is, humans, we have two gears. We have two modes. That's it. We are binary creatures in that our central nervous system, we are either governed by fight or flight, which is our sympathetic nervous system, or we are governed by rest and digest, also called feed and breed. So this is the parasympathetic nervous system. So if a body is in fight or flight, now this has biological implications. We need it. We need our
Yes.
fight or flight system, right? If we're running from a bear, we need all systems. We need all of that blood. We don't need the blood meandering into the gut to digest the Twinkie, right? We need the blood going to large skeletal muscle groups so that we can either fight or flee,
Yeah.
or freeze. There's lots of
Yeah.
there's lots of
Fawn.
new
Yeah.
research on this,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's there's a lot going on there, but we were never meant to be in that sympathetic slash fight or flight state. We run in that state, we run on catecholamines. So these are inputs from our adrenal glands, also called adrenaline,
Mhm.
noradrenaline. These are two neurotransmitters that get secreted from your adrenals, and they they are what make all of these physiological changes, right? So you get pupil dilation so that you can take in all of the light that you possibly can so you can see better, because again, you're fighting for your life, right? It shunts blood away from the digestive mechanisms, away from reproductive mechanisms. It shunts blood to major skeletal muscle groups so that you can, do what you need to do physically to survive. It also increases blood glucose because you need
Right.
access to blood sugar, right? If your
Mhm.
skeletal muscles are going to be, climbing a tree as fast as you can or fighting a tiger, then you need access to lots of blood sugar. And so we see blood sugar spikes now, and so many other things are happening as well. But over the course of time, we can't sustain that effort. We were never designed to sustain an effort like that. And so when our brain tells us that we're in fight or flight, and it's been years of this, the adrenals, they're like, hey, I'm not going to keep kicking out adrenaline. I can't do it. And so, yeah,
They get
it
tired.
really becomes a system where we're no longer responding. Um, and yeah, anyway, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But we we um we make do with another hormone that comes online, and that hormone is called cortisol. And so cortisol will spike to kind of help us to limp along. And
Mhm.
honestly, people feel pretty energetic on large amounts of cortisol. So you tell anybody that has like been clinically prescribed a steroid, and they have lots of energy, all
Yeah.
right? And it's not always great energy, but they have lots of energy. And so
Mhm.
these folks who have elevated levels of cortisol, well, that's a steroid, okay? It's akin to prednisone. And when we have elevated levels, endogenous or exogenous forms of steroid, no matter where it's coming from, when we have elevated levels of cortisol or steroid in the body, that again breeds higher blood sugar. Okay.
Mhm.
And so it also causes, joint and musculoskeletal damage. It causes a suppression of the immune system. You think about, we give massive amounts of steroid to quell inflammation, right? That's clinically how we use steroids. They are life-saving drugs in the right dosage and in the right application. But when we have large amounts of steroid over time, it becomes immunosuppressive. And that eventually can lead to malignancies, cancer. Okay. So lots and lots of things going on here, but there are so many diseases that are downstream of chronic inflammatory state. And I haven't even mentioned I haven't even mentioned the microbiome here. Like there's a gut brain connection there that is not served well by cortisol, because the very last thing that your body is thinking about when you're in survival mode is digestion, right?
Right.
It is a metabolically lavish condition to digest properly. We have to make lots
Mhm.
of digestive inputs like proteases, lipases, all of these things to break down fats and proteins and carbohydrate. These are expensive digestive inputs, and our body has to use energy to make them. It won't do that if we're fighting for our lives, okay? It won't make stomach acid. It won't make all of these digestive inputs. And so, we get maldigestion. Again, Eastern philosophy, there is a bit of wisdom that says all disease enters through the mouth. And so there's this
Oh,
idea, right, that our gut is uniquely associated with disease mechanisms, which, driven by inflammatory processes, and we're off to the races. So that's, again, I don't know if that's the full answer to your question, but if there's anything you'd like to explore, let me know.
well, I mean, just a couple of things. I know that when we're under constant stress, the body doesn't know if there's an actual bear or it's a
Oh yeah, it
perceived
doesn't
bear.
care.
So, yeah,
Right.
so that's the thing about
Yeah.
stress is your body's going to respond the
Hmm.
same way whether it's real or perceived. So that's why we work
Yeah.
with
But
people in
here's
recovery
the
on,
beauty of that. The beauty of that is, as powerful as your brain is, it can convince you that you are in a life-threatening situation every waking moment.
yeah,
But the reverse is also
exhausting.
true. And healing can also come from thoughts and from our brains.
Totally. It just
So,
takes, I think
mhm,
we're wired to the negative, so it just takes double the effort to get back to, and it's a
yeah,
practice. We've got to literally rewire those neural pathways to
right.
the positive. It
Hmm.
can be done. So
It can
that's
be.
what I love about
Yeah,
neuroplasticity, right?
yeah,
That
yep.
with work, and that's the kind of work we do in recovery because
Hmm.
people that are trying to recover from ultra processed food use disorder,
Hmm.
we got to take that stress down low because the
Right.
stress pathway and the craving pathway are right next to one another in the brain. So you're vibrating one and
Hmm.
it activates the craving pathway. So that's why that's so important. And the
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to mention is I had heard a podcast because I like to listen to them too. And
Hmm.
this specialist, cancer specialist, was saying that it is near impossible for you to ever get cancer unless you have inflammation within the cells. And one of the greatest indicators of keeping inflammation out of the cells is what we eat. So
Hmm.
if you can keep your inflammation down within your cells, you've got a real good chance of avoiding
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
uh,
Absolutely.
being plagued with a cancer.
Inflammation, in fact, we're even to the point where we're calling it inflammaging, because aging is an inflammatory process, and we don't, like, there's so much resiliency that is built into a human until a certain point, and then we become we we reach the pinnacle of physical existence, and I don't know, what is it, 30? And then it just sort of, that's when we start to lose, kidney function begins at 30. We lose half of our nephron capabilities between 30 and 70. That is largely driven by oxidative stress, which, is part and parcel of this inflammatory process. So it's biochemically very complex, but you can kind of boil it down to, if you can control inflammation, there you will have a pretty good life. And that's not to say that we will live forever on this terrestrial plane. I certainly don't believe that, but what I'm always striving for is this concept of squaring the curve, right? In our Western society, we've become so disease ridden that, like, you hit 30 and it's this long, slow descent into disability and disease.
Yeah.
And my goal is always, with myself and with patients, is how do we live way up here until we just fall off the cliff, right?
Mhm.
I want to live great, and then just
Right.
out
I
I
don't want to live
go.
long. I want to live
Yes,
well.
yes, yes.
It does not do me any good to live long if I ain't living well.
That's exactly right.
Since we're still on this topic of inflammation, we'll get back to food in a minute, but I love this stuff so much about
Hmm.
inflammation. Um, what are the main things that people can do in their lives to
Hmm.
reduce inflammation? Because I think we've scared them enough with what we said.
It's terrifying. I know. I know. Yeah, so let's just start at the top. Um and actually, so much of this lifestyle stuff, Ashley can speak to this a lot too, because she is really in the business of habit creation. In medical practice, it's a little bit different than the role that I used to have as a nutritionist, but it's all, we're all on the same team, right? So if we start at the top, if we start with the brain controlling thoughts, feelings, and
Love
emotion,
that.
and
You're saying that's number one.
I'm saying it's absolutely number one.
Agree 1000%. I bow
Yeah.
down at your feet. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for saying that. That's
Well,
beautiful.
and in my faith tradition, the Bible speaks about taking every thought captive. And it's just, wisdom written 2000 years ago, it is so prescient today and for all of human history. Taking thoughts captive, not allowing yourself to perseverate on, think on these things, whatsoever pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is good. Those are the things, if we can keep our mind on those things and make it a habit. People will say, "Well, I can't I can't keep I can't keep thinking about good things. Before I know it, I'm perseverating, I'm circling on the bad things again." It's a practice. You have to keep.
Totally.
Yes, it's not something where you can flip a switch and just say, "Okay, I think about good things now." That is not at all how it happens. It is a practice that over time you will notice. It's like gratitude.
Mhm.
Gratitude is the antithesis of so many of these negative
Totally.
thoughts and emotions. And so, if you're in that downward spiral, if you can just arrest for a moment and say, okay, you know what? I'm doing it again. I'm going to get out a piece of paper or make a mental note. What am I grateful for in this moment? And even if the world is falling down around you, you are still breathing. You
Mm.
still have air to breathe. You have water to drink. Most people in this country have food to eat or at least a way to get it. We normally have people in our lives. Like, just start to think, do you have clothes on your body? Um, just start to look around you. And are you in a car? The fact that you have a vehicle to get you from A to B, the fact that you have a writing implement, the fact that you have a phone that you can document your gratitude on, like all of these things. If you can start thinking about that, it's almost impossible to entertain the negative when you are in an active mode of gratitude. So that's where I start, is with brain.
Oh, I love
And
that.
I and I heard, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I heard something just today, actually, that when you're creating a new habit, you have to be so fanatic about it. Like you almost seem crazy to everybody else in order for it to actually become a habit. So,
Mm,
like this gratitude journal, like
mm-hmm,
be a fanatic, have your gratitude journal wherever that, maybe it's a physical book, maybe it's your electronic device,
mm-hmm.
but be a fanatic about having those things in the forefront of your mind.
Yeah. And what the brain repeats becomes easier, right?
Yeah,
So it just becomes, it's
absolutely.
those new neural pathways that you're laying
Yeah.
down. Are you familiar with the story of Corrie ten Boom, who was in the
Oh, yeah.
concentration camp?
Yeah.
And she was grateful for the fleas because then the guards would not come in their barracks and bother the women. So if she can find gratitude, guess what?
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
there's so many stories that come out of persecution. Yeah, it is impossible. It is impossible to not have one thing to be grateful for, because if your heart is beating and you have consciousness, you have a reason for gratitude.
I agree. I think I had mentioned to you guys my husband just recently passed away. It's been 16 weeks today. And so,
Gosh, Paige, I don't think you mentioned that.
okay.
Ah,
That might have slipped. But
Oh
wow.
my
so,
gosh, I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
thank you.
Ah,
So these are practices. Why I'm leaning in as you're saying this
yeah,
is, do you think this has been work for me to be
yeah,
happy and cheerful?
100%.
But
Yeah.
you start saying, okay, he's safe, I'm safe,
Mm-hmm.
everything's
Mm-hmm.
going to be okay.
Mm,
You've got family, you just go
yeah.
down that list of things and you
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
but work, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of work to
Oh, it's
stay just
painful.
chipper. Huge.
It's painful, and I don't. I'm. Thank you for being that vulnerable, because it brings to light. I don't say these things from a place of cavalierness. Um, being that grateful through the pain of life and circumstances, it is intensely difficult.
Hmm.
And it is it is worth it in
Hmm.
every every situation, but it is intensely painful and difficult. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, one of the things that I have recognized through this process is all of these systems that have been in place through my recovery process. That's actually another thing I've been grateful for because I had the practice of gratitude already set in place. I had clean eating already set in place. I
Mm-hmm.
had my sleep habits, I had my movement habits, I had my spirituality. All of those things help you when life kicks you in the teeth, and
Yeah,
it will.
it will.
Having these foundational principles that we practice at Real Food Recovery, as far as food, sleep, spirituality, and movement,
Mm-hmm.
helps prepare you for life's unexpected blows. And tie that all into what you're saying about decreased inflammation starts in the mind. And
Mm-hmm.
then it just drops down into the body from
Yeah.
there, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. We've got these intensely powerful mediators of consciousness that sit between our ears, and the power of our brains, it's just, it's otherworldly. I mean, it's, we still don't understand. You ask anybody that's trained in physiology, we don't have really any idea how the brain works. We just don't. There are people that devote their whole lives to the study of neurology and consciousness and all these things. We don't have any good handle on how this actually works. And so, but what we do know is that the outcome of our thoughts is reality.
Yeah.
And so if we are if we neglect harnessing our thoughts, then we neglect all of the things that are downstream of our thoughts. And essentially that's, it's just such a great metaphor, just the vertical human, right? We've got the brain right at the top, and everything else is downstream of those thoughts. And
Mm.
you know from from a nutritionist standpoint, like myself, one might think that food is the be all end all, but I really believe that it comes first from cognition.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because we have people that come and want to sign up for our program
Mm.
because I mean the ultra processed foods, when I say they're killing them, they are
Yes,
literally
they are.
killing
Mm-hmm.
them on a spiritual level, a mental level, a physical level, a
Mm-hmm.
movement level, all of those things. But, one of the first things they want to know is where's the food list? There's no food list. We just go with single ingredient foods. Okay, well, where's the printout? And you just have to make them understand that yes, it's about the food, but that's just a byproduct of what's going on
Mm-hmm.
upstairs. There's a reason that you're
Yeah.
reaching for these dopaminergic food items
Right.
versus getting them from your life. And so let's
Yeah.
explore, let's start peeling back some layers and
Yeah.
find out what's driving those behaviors because
Yeah.
people that are well settled in their life and have these rich, fulfilling lives are not reaching for those
Mm-hmm.
things. And we're going to get you to that place. We're here to get you
Okay.
into the lifeboat and out of the rocky ocean. So
Yeah.
that's why I love
Yeah.
that you're bringing that up about thoughts.
Yeah, the dopamine hits don't last long, and they get increasingly short over time.
Do you want to talk
And
about down regulation?
well, yeah, we can talk about dopaminergic receptors. They actually, so I think we can think about this from a pain standpoint, because people are probably more familiar with pain receptors and the idea of like opioids. Okay, I think it's pretty common knowledge that if you take a drug like a morphine opiate kind of pain reliever, you need more of the same drug to exert the same effect. Caffeine is the same way. And like you need more caffeine to get to that, ooh, I have an altered state, right? You need more and more of it over time. And there is this concept of receptor downregulation where your little cells, if they are awash in that opioid or if they are awash in the dopamine, they know there's this innate knowledge, this cellular knowledge that we are just created with, where the cells are like, okay, but I don't think this is okay for us. I think this is probably not how we're supposed to be acting. We're probably not supposed to be high on dopamine or opiates all the time. So, what we're going to do, we're going to take our little receptors and we're going to pull them back inside the cell so that we're not constantly stimulated by these things. And so,
Mhm.
when you think about the hit, and I don't even care what your behavior of choice is, and you want to get into the nitty gritty. There's food addiction, there's sex addiction. People really, men in particular, really struggle with pornography. There is gambling addiction, there's alcohol addiction, there's drug addiction. All of these things tickle those dopamine receptors. And so the the high or the altered pleasurable state, it only lasts as long as those dopamine receptors are hit. But if the cells are bringing them back in and not creating more, then you can give more and more and more of the drug and just completely saturate the receptors in your body. But what's going to happen is you will reach a place finally where you will have to have the behavioral or chemical input in order to reach baseline.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what's so scary.
That is what's so scary. So when you think about a human being starts at a baseline, you get a dopamine hit and you get this mountain of, oh, this is fantastic, right? Then you keep having to more and more of the substance or the behavior to get that same height on the mountain. And the mountain just keeps getting lower and lower and lower until finally your baseline now is flights below where it used
Yeah.
to be. And you actually have to have the input just to reach your previous baseline. So it's really, really important that, for those that have not fallen down the addictive highway, that you don't start, because the AAers say if you don't start, you don't have to stop. And there's so much wisdom. Gosh, there's so much wisdom in the 12 step sorts of groups, right? As they handle addiction. But yeah, it's a scary process.
Totally. And for people that are suffering from addiction, the further you get into it, people are just working off the pain pleasure balance and they're no longer trying to get high. They're just trying to get up to
That's
baseline.
right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
so scary to be in
Yeah.
that place. And
Yeah.
it ain't that fun anymore,
No, it
right? It
isn't.
just,
And somebody that's trying to help you is essentially saying, so you're telling me that I have to live at this lower baseline and feel worse than I ever did. And you're telling me that that's the only way to claw myself back to where I was
yeah.
previously? I wasn't even
Mhm.
feeling that great previously. Otherwise, I never would have started this behavior, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's a long road. However, what's the alternative?
I, I mean, death, the
Yeah,
graveyard, jail. I
it's
mean,
a
it's
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And
misery.
so you have to get a little bit existential about human existence to understand that, like, we're here to figure some stuff out. And
Yeah.
this is one of the things that we need to figure out.
That's right. And which is why I take this topic so seriously because it is controlling people's lives. And all those
Yeah.
addictions you mentioned, totally agree.
Yeah.
But the problem with food is you got to keep eating.
That's exactly right. You cannot abstain from eating. Mm-hmm.
And we live in this environment where these ultra processed foods are literally killing us.
Right.
And I can't remember what the statistics were about how much of the daily diet people are consuming in ultra processed food
Oh,
versus single ingredient foods. It's
horrifying.
terrible. And then we
It's
talk about
horrifying.
school lunches and school
Yeah.
breakfasts and what their
Yeah.
kids are getting
Well,
at every.
and Paige, just to add fuel to the fire,
Let's do it.
oh my gosh, now you don't really know what is in your produce. Things are being added to produce these days. So people this is sort of the evolution of, people, okay, I'm gonna get healthy. I'm gonna get healthy. Everybody knows. Like, you ask a 4-year-old, you hold out a candy bar and you hold out an apple, and you say, which one is better for you, kiddo? Every single child is going to say, it's the apple, right? We know this. Inherently, we know
I
this.
agree.
And so the things that we go back to when we're going to get our proverbial crap together, right? The things that we go back to, those are becoming unsafe.
I
And
know.
so it's so important that we reach out and get help for this journey, because unfortunately we have lost the luxury of just simply falling back into the things that people used to do.
Yeah.
Because you think about the great single ingredient foods: meat, vegetables, fruits, um fats, good fats, nuts, seeds, beans, those kinds of things. And now all of a sudden, they are created with all manner of genetic intervention. And so it's really important that we understand that this journey is longer than it used to be. So strap in
Yeah.
and get serious about it.
No, that actually is a very big statement because there are people that come to us and, they're ready to, okay, let's do recovery. And in 10 days, I'm ready to be all done.
Fixed. Right.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
a year's journey. It's taken
Yeah,
you
it is.
decades to get here, and you've probably tried every diet there
Yeah.
is out there, which only made everything worse. And this is a huge rewiring of the brain, the way you think, the way your taste buds, we're going to rewire your
Yeah.
taste buds, even those will change, but relationships may change, your
Yeah.
thought patterns will change, your habits will change.
Hmm.
That's going to take a minute.
It is.
And unfortunately, about week 3, we
Hmm.
lose a lot of people.
Yeah. We That's so interesting that you say that, because as a extremely overzealous clinical nutritionist,
Yeah.
I I used to prescribe all manner of really restrictive diets that, would they have worked? Yes. They would have worked in spades. Like, to change human physiology with food, you can absolutely do it. We can start to change your microbiome within 24 hours of different dietary inputs. Okay. So
That's
it's
amazing.
powerful. But the
Hmm.
fact is, if somebody cannot do it, all the great inputs in the world aren't going to work if it
Yeah.
is not sustainable for someone.
Yeah. That's the problem with those diets is
Yeah.
humans are
And
involved.
about
Darn it.
3 weeks in, people are like, Uncle,
Mm-mm.
I can't
Uh-huh.
do it. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it becomes a little hopeless looking. But yeah, just understanding, again, strap in. This is a long
Right.
journey.
Yeah. Thank you for
And
saying that.
yeah, it yeah.
So I want to be respectful of you girls' time, and but I want to make sure to put in the question about hopelessness, and let's talk about what are some functional first steps that someone can take without being overwhelmed that would increase their likelihood of making changes and starting some sustainable habits and leaning into
Yeah.
single ingredient foods, because you're going to have to go through detox when you get off
Right.
sugar. It's like
Yeah.
any other drug.
Yeah.
They were saying the other day on 60 Minutes, which I've always known that sugar, the brain recognizes sugar like cocaine in that addictive center. So you're going to have
Yeah.
to go through detox, and it
Yeah.
might not be
Uh,
pretty for a couple days, but it
that's
does
right.
get better.
That's right.
So for people
Mm-hmm.
that are willing to dip their toe in and think about
Mm-hmm.
this, let's talk about where they can start that would give them the greatest chances of surviving and
Yeah.
changing their lives.
Well, okay. And I sound like a one-trick pony when I say this. Ashley knows exactly what I'm going to say. I have found the biggest bang for your buck is to get off of gluten. And that is, it is not to say, and I can give you chapter and verse on mechanism, on what this does to your gut, on how this impacts your downstream physiology. But suffice it to say, gluten is not a food group. It is not something that the body recognizes as food. I will have a conversation any day of the week with someone who says, "Yeah, but you can't. That's a whole food group." No, it isn't. Gluten is not a food group. It is not something that the body derives nutrition from. Period.
That's true.
Now, if you can get someone off of gluten, you can immediately start to lower the inflammatory burden. Now, here is the other side of that. When you remove gluten, you remove so many offending processed agents from the diet just in that one fell swoop. Now, can you eat crappy on a gluten-free diet? Yes, you absolutely 100% you can. You
Where
can.
there's a will, there's a way.
That's exactly right. There are junk substitutes for absolutely everything. But the good thing is most people can't afford it. So, so what I tell people, it's never been easier to eat gluten-free. Start there. Does this mean that you are gluten intolerant or that you are celiac? No, it absolutely doesn't. But if you want an easy 101 rule to follow that's going to improve your health measurably, start there. Start there. And don't get substitutes. Like if you were used to eating bread, find something else. Find something else. You don't need to substitute a gluten-free substitute for everything that you used to eat. So, if you can get in that mindset, it will keep you from so many things that increase your inflammatory burden.
You suggest that before addressing sugar.
You know, I do because if I can get the gluten out, I can get a lot
That's
of,
true.
right? I mean, you think
Hmm.
about the things that people are eating,
Cookies.
cookies, pasta, cake,
Yeah.
pastries, donuts,
Hmm.
all of that is loaded with gluten. And if I can get that out, that is a place to start. Then I'm also getting out pasta, I'm getting bread out, bagels, all of those things, which keeps blood sugar at a manageable level. So cheap and easy carbohydrate, yeah, if we can get that out, it's a place to start.
Yeah.
And then as they start to feel a little less bloated, here's what will absolutely, there's no argument about this. What will happen is that the gut lining will main it will increase its integrity. That absolutely happens, and their
Hmm.
digestion will improve in a
Hmm.
measurable sense. And so then I feel like when people have gotten a win, even though it's hard, but they've gotten a win, they're able to make the next change then. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now I want you to stop drinking that soda. We're going to get
Mm-hmm.
that out. Now I want you to remove food dyes. Now right? So it's this stepwise fashion because, gosh, as much as I cannot stand diet sodas and all of the chemicals that are in
Oh,
there,
yeah.
I would much sooner pry the gluten out of somebody's hands because I get so many quick hits on that I don't get with a diet soda. You remove diet
Yeah.
soda and calorically you really haven't done anything. Now you've
Mm-hmm.
done something to the brain and I acknowledge all of that, but we're in this for the long haul. And I think if you can get somebody off of their gluten, it covers, you get like 5 or 6 things for that one,
Yeah.
withholding.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I had not thought about that before. My dad, who's 84, he's starting paying a little more attention, watching my YouTubes, listening to my
Oh,
podcasts, and he listened to one the other day and said, "Now, is bread processed?" If Dad's listening,
yeah,
he'll know this
that's
story.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
Dad, it'll last a month or two on
Yeah,
your counter, so. I
yeah,
said, What do you use it for?" So you've always got to start with getting more information from people. Tell
absolutely.
tell me what you use it for.
Yeah,
Well, at lunch I have my sandwiches
yeah.
and I need easy. I said, Dad, what do you think about a salad for lunch every day? And I make a week's worth at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll need to think about that. So
Yeah,
he has his sandwich with his chips and a couple Oreos and he's happy as a clam. So it's okay. We can just
yeah.
keep talking about it, and
That's right.
maybe
That's right.
we think about crowding out, not maybe we don't get
Yeah,
rid of the sandwiches totally. Maybe we just
yeah,
add in a side salad or a couple of days a week do a salad instead.
yeah.
But yeah, bread these days, if it will last on your counter for
Oh my
months,
gosh. It's
then
shameful. Yeah,
yeah,
it's shameful. And you know what? And this is the other thing that I could absolutely see somebody who is in recovery and maintaining their recovery. Can you eat homemade, like fresh pasta? Can you eat bread? I mean, unless you have celiac, unless you have a true gluten sensitivity, unless you have autoimmune disease, like we're getting into the clinical weeds a little bit, but if you don't have a physiological reason why you should not be having gluten, um, I don't see any reason to avoid it. I really don't. But most people, I would say 95% of people who are eating gluten right now, the form of that gluten, there's
right.
nothing good in it.
That's
There's
right.
nothing good in it.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. Actually, that was a great topic to end on. Do you want to, before we leave, mention where people can find you guys?
Oh,
And
thank
Ashley,
you.
if you
Yeah.
have anything you want to pipe in and say, please do.
Yeah, so I am a nurse practitioner. I'm a family practice nurse practitioner, but I'm licensed in Kansas and Colorado and Idaho. And I see patients in those 3 states. Um, I can be found at Rocky Mountain Health Partners. That's my clinic name here in Idaho. It is rmhealthpartners.com is our website. And we have this little podcast called the Double A Podcast, where you can hear Ashley and I, and we had Paige on for a wonderful episode. So you can, if Paige is your hero, then you can also pop over to Double A and you can listen to her episode there too. But Ashley, where you can find us on all. Ashley does the podcast stuff. She's so more electrically minded than I am.
Well, yeah, you can find us on all listing platforms, the Double A podcast.
Mhm.
And yeah, we can, if you want to link to that, we can give that to you, Paige. But yeah, no, this was great. Andrea is a wealth of knowledge. She,
Ah,
just like you said in your intro, um, she hates being shined upon. She does not like to be in the spotlight,
Too bad.
but I know. But she has been a huge influence in the best of ways possible in my life. And she's taught me
Mm.
so much about just how powerful food is.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to even have an inkling of what she is, has stowed away in that brain, just go listen to some podcast of ours. But she's also a fabulous practitioner and wonderful to work with.
And it
That's
sounds
my
like a
best friend. So,
pretty good, darn good human too.
oh,
So,
thank
She's
you.
pretty good. Yeah, I'll keep her around. She can't get rid of me for
We
sure.
keep each other in line. Yeah.
well, I hope the three of us can meet back together and do more of this in the future. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting conversations, and I appreciate your time so much. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And our book, Real Food Recovery If Food Isn't the Answer, What's the Question, can be found on Amazon today. Thanks so much for being with us today. Bye,
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks
See you
for
next
having me,
time.
Thank
Paige. Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.